You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 328, when your ex is sending mixed signals. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful brave hearts. I am so excited to be here with you today. I want to talk about confusion. So currently, I am hosting the Breakup Hotline event this week, which has been so much fun. It's the week that leads up to Valentine's Day, and it's just been epic and delicious, and I'm obsessed. What happened, though, is we actually have Bravehearts submit questions ahead of time, and we do that to make sure to get all of their answers to them, all the questions answered. And what I have noticed is a theme in many of the questions being asked, and I wanted to talk about it here on the podcast. So the theme or the pattern at play that I'm seeing is that overall, like this happened in so many scenarios that were shared this week, my ex is saying one thing, and then my ex does something very different than the words being spoken about, and therefore I'm confused on what action I should take next. And there were so many flavors of it. It was like, oh, my ex said, that they still wanted to be with me, but then their actions say that they don't. Or my ex says that they don't want to be with me, and then their actions kind of look the opposite of that. And again, confusion was always the topic. And I really want to talk about this because I feel like the way that we're approaching this isn't working. Because in my world, I really do truly see confusion as an optional state to live in. And confusion isn't even the problem, but I really need to address it here because what I'm witnessing so many of us sitting in and struggling in when we're feeling confused is the way that we show up when we're feeling confused. As a recap, short little recap here, remember, thoughts create your feelings. Okay. And then those feelings fuel the actions and the behaviors that you participate in life. Those actions then create the results that you live with. So I really want you to take just a moment and think about, how do I show up when I'm confused? And I started to look around at these different examples, the conversations I'm having, the coaching I'm doing. And here are a lot of the things that I'm witnessing when people are feeling confused about something. The first thing I witness is that they're hovering. They end up hovering instead of choosing something. They don't fully stay, and they also don't fully leave. And I think this is fascinating because I'm witnessing that confusion really hates finality. It wants access without responsibility, which is funny because you're doing the very thing that you wish that your ex would stop doing. The second thing I see is when you're feeling confused, you share feelings, but you don't actually make decisions. It's like talking, pondering, thinking about, ruminating about, but not taking any action in any direction because you refuse to make a decision. You're just sitting in decision debt with confusion. The third thing is that you ask these circular questions. You never actually answer the questions that you continuously ask yourself and other people. You just circle the same questions over and over and over again. Do you think we could ever? What do you think went wrong? Do you think I made a mistake? It's like rehashing the same breakup story over and over and over again in the name of confusion. Your confusion will continue to loop. But I think when we decide and then we create answers for ourselves, it creates a lot of clarity that pushes us forward in a direction. The fourth thing that I'm witnessing is when you're feeling confused, you outsource clarity and decisions to other people. So instead of just deciding what's best for you, you kind of like pull your ex or pull the room. You continuously ask your ex for answers when they've really given you the answers and you're just not accepting them. Your ex's words and actions combined create an answer. So crazy. Confusion is looking for consensus because what I think is happening is your self-trust is really offline, right? Which is really important. I'll just caveat a little side note here. Self-trust is really the problem that I see at play is I'm not willing to trust myself, and so therefore I get to sit in confusion about it. Because it's kind of scary to trust yourself, especially after a breakup. You're used to making combined decisions. You're used to doing things together. You're used to having your consciousness fused with somebody else. And so you're constantly validated in this little vacuum with that person. And so when you take that away, you might have a wobble. You might be sitting in self-doubt because of what you thought was real, perhaps didn't turn out to be quote unquote real, and just self-trust is lacking, and therefore it's easier to stay confused, which we'll talk about in just a second. But I want you to really see, I want to sell you on the idea that confusion isn't working for you and what it's ultimately creating. So the fifth thing that I witnessed in a lot of these conversations and coaching that I did this week is confusion's really leading you to feeling stuck, but it's in the name of love. Meaning you're mistaking the confusion as, oh my God, I just love this person, so I don't want to do what will make it work with them. And overall, when I'm witnessing my Bravehearts staying in confusion about what their ex is doing, it really leads to them doing the very thing that they hate watching their ex do. And it's just like this loop of indecision and inaction, which results in stuckness and no forward momentum in any direction. And you just like wallow in the same thing. It's almost like it reminds me, the experience of it and talking about it and coaching on it, it reminds me of just you're getting in the same bathwater over and over and over again, and you will not drain the bathwater because you don't know if you're going to use the bathwater again. It's disgusting. It's so gross. And I get it. Listen, I get it. I understand. And I want you to see that it's not working. Okay? I am a huge advocate of just dropping the confusion, completely removing it from the equation. And I think there are a couple things that we can remember through the confusion. Okay? Confusion might feel easier than the real emotion at play. If your ex is saying that they want to be with you and then their action doesn't match that, perhaps the hard truth is you'd rather be confused about that than feel the disappointment and the rejection. If your ex is saying, I don't want to be with you, but then showing behaviors that they do, perhaps it's easier to be confused about that than feel the feelings of disappointment about their lack of clarity. So confusion might feel easier than handling the emotion that would happen if you accepted the reality of a situation. And that's okay, but just build awareness of that. Kind of like with the self-trust piece, it might actually be easier for you to sit with the familiarity of confusion than with the feeling of a lack of self-trust. I guess the feeling of self-doubt, right? But as you build awareness of that, I'd then start asking yourself, if I wasn't confused about this, what would I be? And then deal with that. If it's feeling rejected, then okay, I'm going to let myself feel rejected. And that gives you forward momentum to say, okay, this is me feeling rejected. And now what? Now what do I want to do? Well, I want a partnership in which I don't feel rejected. I want to be with someone whose actions match their words. And now I have to take the necessary steps towards that, which is scary AF, right? And that's probably why you're sitting in confusion, because you get to avoid the fear that goes along with that. You get to avoid the rejection itself. But confusion is the mechanism that your brain, that your mind is using to keep you bonded to your ex. It actually helps kind of build that attachment instead of reduce it. And ultimately, the only reason I'm sharing about this is one, it was so apparent in almost every question that got submitted this week. But two, you cannot, if you are someone who does want to be with your ex, you cannot win your ex back or win at even moving on if you don't want your ex back while you're sitting in the old icky bathwater of confusion. You will literally have to release confusion, aka drain the bathtub water, get out. The longer you hold on to being confused, the more passive you become. And winning, whether that's winning your ex back or winning at moving on, requires agency. It requires you to hit the button to drain the bathwater and either get fresh water or get the fuck out of the tub. You cannot create a bigger and better life from a place of indecision and inaction. And confusion is draining. You are spending your time being confused instead of building. You're draining energy, focus, creativity, confidence, forward momentum, and your bigger and better life requires all of those things. The time is passing regardless. I had this huge epiphany. I was speaking to an influencer. Actually, I love her. I'll share her name. Her name's Brittany Ogus. She does like fitness for postpartum moms. And we were chatting back and forth about losing weight and postpartum and this whole journey that I'm experiencing. And we were talking about counting macros. And I'm like, it's really hard for me to like maintain tracking my macros. And she said something that was like a huge epiphany of like, well, what's fascinating and what I see is a lot of moms like worrying about tracking macros, saying that they don't have time to track macros, but yet the time that goes into worrying about not losing the weight when they could have just lost the weight by tracking the macros, they become equal. They kind of like X each other out. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true. I think in the amount of time that I spent worrying about trying to lose this last 10 pounds that I'm struggling to lose, I probably could have just been tracking the macros. Like the time is the same. So it's the same thing here with confusion. Is confusion, you are literally investing your time, spending the currency of time being confused in these circular questions, not answering your questions, ruminating and wallowing in the same dirty old bathwater. When in that time, you could have actually just handled the rejection, handled the self-doubt, and then gone on and continued to have the forward momentum. Now, we don't say all that to shame ourselves or beat ourselves up. We just say that of like, oh, interesting. If the time's going to pass either way, what do I want to be doing with the time? Being confused isn't working, so let's try something new, right? So the power move that you get to make today, Braveheart, is dropping the confusion. And to do so, I think it would be very awesome of you to answer these two questions. Number one, what is the real feeling behind the confusion? If I wasn't confused, what would I have to feel? What is it that I'm avoiding feeling by feeling confused? And number two, if I wasn't confused, what action becomes clear? If I wasn't confused, what action becomes clear? And when you ask yourself these two questions, you will get so much clarity that will help you get unstuck and make actual forward momentum, regardless of the signals your ex is giving you, regardless of what's going on with your ex. You don't have to be confused. Your ex could actually be confused and you're not confused about any of it. Isn't that mind-blowing? That's mind-blowing. I have to talk. I'm just going to riff real quick on that because I remember going through my called off engagement and it was really hard. I talked a lot about this in the last episode. I think it was last week's episode. And my ex-fiance at the time was really confused about a lot of things. Confused if he wanted kids, confused if we should get married, confused about all of it. And I didn't have to be confused about any of it. I chose to know in my bones that we were going through trauma. We were having trauma experiences. Of course, he was questioning everything. I don't have to make it mean anything about myself or my worth. Nope. It's not about me. Like that's his own battle internally to figure out what he wants. That is scary. I'm also trying to figure out, what do I want? Did I want to be in the relationship if we didn't want kids. I don't know. I'm also confused or not confused, but I also am not sure of my answer to that. Doesn't mean I have to wallow in confusion or like be confused about it. I'm just not sure, period. And I feel certain in my not sureness of that, and that is okay. And I can also know he can feel a lack of clarity, and I can move on with my life regardless. I'm going to move on with my life regardless. And I did. I bought a house. I continued to build what I considered my bigger and better life. I decided, do I want kids? Do I not want kids? How do I get unattached to having kids? And then it became very clear to me that I was like, yeah, no, I'm in this relationship. I'm in this relationship, and he can have a lack of clarity for himself, and I'm going to wait until he decides what is clear for him to see if it's still a good fit. And it didn't mean I put my life on pause. I continued to do all of the things and build this epic, beautiful, amazing life, knowing that the right partner was going to be there at the right time, whether that was him or someone new. All right. I hope I got the point across. If you have questions, please DM me at Breakup Coach Dorothy about this topic. I'm happy to chit chat about it. I love you, beautiful brave hearts. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.